Now, being able to access my Google Drive files on my computer using GNOME Online accounts is great. However, what I actually want to do is be able to not only access my files, but also to have copies of my files on my computer, and also have the ability to synchronize my computer with my Google Drive and vice versa. So the next application I'm going to install will actually allow me that ability. So the application is called Rclone. So I'm going to jump into the computer and get set up. Cool, so here I am in MX Linux, and if you're not using MX Linux, then I'll show you how you can still install Rclone. But before I actually do all that, I'm actually going to uninstall the GNOME Online accounts because I won't actually need it once I've installed Rclone. So I'll go through the uninstall process. I'll firstly open my MX package installer. And if you're not using MX Linux, then you do this process in the Synaptic Package Manager. Cool, and then I'll go over to the stable repository. And actually, before I do that, I'm actually going to disconnect my Google Drive from the GNOME Online accounts. So I'll click that and then select Remove Accounts. And now it's no longer attached. So I can close out of this and then remove it. So I'll do a search for GNOME Online accounts. There it is there. And I'll select that. And then I'll also remove the control center. There it is there, and it'll also remove the control center data. So now I'll click uninstall. And before I do that, I'll actually go into my file browser. And as you can see, it's already been removed from here. So even though there's an instance here, if I click off, then it's actually gone. So I can minimize my file browser window and then click OK. And it's suggesting I run the auto remove command after this as well. And that's completed. So I'll click OK. And then what I'll do is I'll actually open up a terminal window and I'll just run the auto remove command. So sudo apt auto remove -y for yes, and then enter. And it's saying I need to close the MX package installer, so I'll just do that now. There we go. And I'm just doing this to make sure that I have a tidy install of the Rclone browser. There we go, that's completed. So I'll exit out of there and then jump into my file browser window and go to my home directory, and I'll Control H to show the hidden files, and I'll scroll up here and then click on local and then share and then applications and the GNOME Control Center. I'll actually delete this instance that we created. So I'll delete that and we are pretty much done. So I'll just check that it has been removed from here as well. Just scroll down to GNOME. Where are we? GNOME Online accounts is not here. Cool, so we are done. So now I'll remove this shortcut from the dock. Gone. And now I'll go through the process of installing Rclone. So if you open up your MX package installer, and this is if you're using MX Linux, and then jump into your stable repository and do a search for Rclone, you'll find Rclone is right here, and you can actually install it from here. This is version 1.53.3-1 plus B6. But I'm actually not going to install this version. I'm going to install a newer version, and this is off the actual Rclone website. And I'm also going to install the Rclone browser, but not this one either. I'm actually going to install a fork of the Rclone browser, which is a newer version of Rclone browser that was created to kind of fix some of the issues with the original Rclone browser. So before I close out of that, I'll jump into my web browser and then go to rclone.org. Cool, and this is the official website, and then I'll jump into the downloads page. And as you can see here, 1.58, which is slightly newer than 1.53. So I'm going to close out of the MX package installer because I'm not going to use that. And there's actually installers for all of these other Linux distros. And there's even the deb package if you wanted to install the 64-bit or the 32-bit versions. But I'm actually going to install using this command here. And this is just a single command to install Rclone. So I'll triple click that, Control-C to copy, and then I'll minimize my web browser and then open up a terminal window, Control-Alt-T, and then Control-Shift-V to paste, and then press enter. And that has completed. Now, because I've already used the terminal and entered my password, it didn't actually ask for my password for this install. So if your install kind of seems like it's stuck and you don't know why, then just enter your password, press enter, and it should actually complete the install. Cool, so it's suggesting that I run this command here, rclone config, but I'm actually going to install a graphic user interface, which will mean that I only have to minimally use my terminal to manage my Google accounts. So I'm going to close out a terminal for now, and then jump back into my web browser. And now I'm going to do a search for Rclone Browser. Cool, and so this is actually the original version. I'll open up this, and the version I actually want is this one here from Kapitański. I think I said that right. So this was the original version, and if I go to the releases page, which will take me to the GitHub releases page for the Rclone browser, and this is from Mimozico, and I'll scroll down here, and as you can see 1.2 is the latest, but if I go back a page to the Rclone browser page, and I'll actually tile this window so we can see, and as you can see this version was last updated in 2017. So the version that I'm going to install instead is this one here, and I'll click on how to get it, and here we are now in the GitHub page for the Kapitański's Rclone fork. So I'll scroll up this page here, and as you can see here, this version was actually last updated in 2020. So it's still a couple of years old. However, this is actually a very stable version of the Rclone browser. So this is the version I'll use. So if I go to the releases page and then scroll down here, and here we go. So I have app images I can use. There are also Mac OS, a Raspberry Pi version, and Windows 32 and 64-bit versions as well. So I'll click on the 64-bit version, that's this one here, and I'll download this into my downloads folder, and then open the app image. So this will automatically open on my system the app image launcher, and I'll click integrate and run, and there we go. This is the Rclone browser. So I'll minimize the Firefox browser, and I'll just move this up a little bit. Cool, so what I'm going to do first is click config. So I'll click that button, and I'll move this to the left as well, and then go through the process of actually connecting my Google Drive. So I want to create a new remote. So I'll press N and then enter. And then I want to name this. So I'm actually going to name this the Google Drive name. And then in this list, these are all the different things that you can actually connect using Rclone. So absolutely brilliant. So if I just scroll down here to number 17, which is Google Drive, and then just take note of the number, which is 17, and then I'll scroll back down to the command prompt, and then just type in 17, enter. And if you actually have a Google Application Client ID, then you'd enter it here, but it's actually perfectly fine just to leave it empty. So I'll just press enter, and then enter again. As you can see here, press enter to leave empty. So I'll just press enter. And then I want this to have full access to all files, excluding the application data folder. So I'll press 1 and then enter. and then it's asking for the ID of the root folder. So what it means here, if I just jump back into my web browser and I'll open a new page and go to my Drive account, and I'll just use Bitwarden to sign in. There we go. So what it means is if I created a folder here, and I'll just call this delete this folder. So what it's asking for here is to enter the root folder ID. So for example, if I wanted to open this folder here and I only wanted to sync whatever's in this folder here, then up in the URL line, if I expand that, this number here is actually the root folder ID. So it starts with 1 normally. And so I'd copy that and then paste that into this field here. But if I leave it empty, it'll actually synchronize with my entire drive, which is what I want. So I'll minimize Firefox and jump back into the terminal window and just press enter. And then for the service account file, I'll just leave this empty and press enter. And then it's asking if I want to enter the advanced config. The default is no, so I'll just press enter for no. And then use auto config. The default is yes, so I'll just press enter for the default. And that opens up my web browser. So now if I log into my account, and this is to give the Rclone app access to my Google Drive, and then click allow. Success, all done. Please go back to Rclone. So I'll minimize Firefox, and the code has been automatically entered. So now I'm being asked, configure this as a shared drive or a team drive. I'm just gonna go with the default, which is no, so I'll press enter. And then is this okay? I can still edit this if I wanted to by pressing E, or I could delete this remote and start again, but I'm gonna press Y for yes, and then enter. And we are done. So now I have my Google Drive here. And so what I'm going to do is now quit the config. So I'll press Q and then enter. And there we go. Now back in Rclone Browser, here is my Google Drive that has been added. So you can add as many Google Drives as you want and manage them all from here. What I'm going to do now is actually enter my Google Drive. So I'll double click that, and that's loading. And there we go. These are all the files that I have in my Google Drive. So I'll open up my Google Drive and go back to the root. And as you can see, here are all the files here. Now, if I wanted to, I could, if I just move this down, I could actually delete a folder from the Rclone browser. So for example, I'll right click that and I'll select delete. And then yes to delete the folder. And there we go, it's updated on my Google Drive. What I want to do now is actually connect my computer to my Google Drive. So if I open up a file browser window, currently the Google Drive is not actually connected yet. So what I'm going to do is firstly create somewhere for the drive to exist. So I'll just right click and create a folder called Google_Drive. Then I'll open up this folder, and inside of this folder I can create as many folders for each Google Drive that I want to connect. So I'll create a folder here and I'll give it the name of the drive. So STEMTV_drive. And then click create, and then I'll open up this folder and I'll move this back to the right again. And now in my Rclone browser, if I click mount, and then I'll navigate to the STEMTV drive and I'll click open, and then refresh, and then go into my STEMTV drive, Control R to refresh that. And here are the files that I have in my Google Drive. Now, similar to the GNOME online accounts, if I were to unmount the drive, so I'll just close all of these and I'll unmount it from here. Click yes. And actually I'll make this window smaller. Now if I go to my file browser window and Control R to refresh, as you can see, the files are no longer on my computer. So what I want to do now is actually create a couple of tasks that will allow me to synchronize my computer to the Google Drive and also my Google Drive to my computer, because occasionally if I'm away from the office and I'm away from my computer and I'll create files or anything like that in my Google Drive, I want to be able to download those files onto my computer. So I'll go back to Rclone Browser and I'll go to the remotes and I'll reload the remote. And this time, rather than mounting it, I'm going to create a couple of tasks. So firstly, I'll create a download task. So it's selected the drive correctly. So that's this drive here, because I did do a mount. But if you haven't actually mounted the drive, then you just navigate to the folder using this choose folder function. But I'll cancel it out of there. And what I want to do is I want to create a sync, and it'll delete after transferring. Then I'll give this task a description. So I'll call this sync download and then the drive name. And I'm going to save this task, and then I'll click on upload and I'll do the same here. So I'll sync, delete after transfer, give this a description, sync, and this is upload, name of drive. Now, before I save this, what I've noticed is it'll actually try to save into a folder that doesn't actually exist on my Google Drive. See, there's no stemtv_drive folder here. So what I'll do is I'll go back here and I'll just delete that to the colon, and so this is now selected the root, and then I'll save that task. And now if I go to tasks and then select the sync download and then press run and go over to jobs, and I'll open that up. So that's now transferring the files to the computer. And there we go, it's now says that it's finished. So now if I disconnect everything, and I'll disconnect here, and so now we've disconnected this drive, but I'll actually close Rclone Browser. As you can see, the files are now on my computer, which is absolutely brilliant. So now I'll reopen Rclone Browser, and I'll actually drag this into my dock, and then launch Rclone Browser. And then double click on the remote. So there we go, now we can see the drive. So now if I go to my Google Drive, and what I'll do is I'll actually create a folder, because there is a little anomaly with this function. So if I call this empty folder, so now we have an empty folder here. So I'll go back to Rclone Browser and go to tasks. If I select the sync download task and run that, it says that the task has completed. And if I go back to my file browser window and Control R to reload the page, as you can see, the empty folder didn't actually get downloaded. So that's one little anomaly to keep in mind, that if you have empty folders on your Google Drive, then it won't actually download those folders. However, if I were to put something in the folder, so I'll just make a copy of this JPEG, and then I'll select and drag it inside of the folder. So now we have this file here inside of the empty folder, and I'll go back to Rclone Browser and then run the task again. So I'll run the download task, and as you can see, the empty folder was downloaded because it's no longer empty. Cool, now if I go back to my tasks, if I make any changes on my computer and I want to update my drive, then I'd run this upload sync task. So for example, if I go to this empty folder, which is no longer empty, and I'll right click that and I'll actually delete it, and then go to Rclone Browser, select the upload sync, and then run that. And this folder should momentarily disappear. And there you go, from my Google Drive. So that is how you can synchronize a Google Drive to your computer, and this is all done for free with Rclone and Rclone Browser.